childcare. Okay, childcare is now the most expensive thing on the family budget, followed by, guess what next?
I'm sure housing.
The health insurance.
Oh, sure. Well,
healthcare.
Yeah.
Housing is like third on the list.
Yeah.
So,
healthcare, housing, childcare, transportation. I mean, these are some of the main.
So these things have inflated well beyond the average rate of inflation.
Yeah, I've got a chart here that actually shows how much more these things cost than they did 30 years ago. And to your point, food actually costs less than it did 30 years ago. But if you look at college is over 80% more expensive than it was 30 years ago. Housing is over 120% more expensive. Healthcare is about 30% more expensive, and childcare is about 20% more expensive.
Expensive.
Actually, it's 20% more expensive according to this data that
is
here.
Biased data, because 30 years ago, dual income households weren't as prominent as they are today.
Yeah, I don't know how they source this, but your point is correct, which, millennials feel strapped. German stock market. Okay. Do you know how much it is?
I know it's less than Nvidia. I think Nvidia.
$2 trillion. Yeah. We have, here in the US, our top 5 companies make up, I'm just going to do rough math, 11, 14, 17 trillion. Just our top 5. That's 8x the size of the entire German stock market. When you think, this is what's so...
Well, and Germany is the size of Ohio, though.
Well, they're the largest economy in the EU.
Yeah, I know, but
they back up the whole freaking Eurozone.
It's impressive the amount of output Germany produces, though.
Especially when you consider after World War I, they were absolutely in a mess of debt. They had 50-year, 80-year financing or something for their war crimes. But the point that I'm trying to make is that, over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of money that's been printed, not just in the US, but all over the world. And that money's got to go somewhere. If you're a government or if you're a sovereign wealth fund and you yank your money out of the US stock market, you don't sit it in an FDIC insured bank account. The FDIC insured bank accounts are not a thing for governments and large entities around the world. You've got to park that money somewhere. You don't just sit the money in cash. And so where do you put it? And the US stock market being as big as it is, you can hide $1 trillion in the US stock market pretty easily, right? It's big enough that $1 trillion isn't going to move it 50% or something like that. You put $1 trillion into Germany, which is a $2 trillion market, the whole thing goes up 50%. You just can't hide $1 trillion in Germany like you can in the US.
Yeah.
I think this is why it's a lot harder for capital markets to shift out of people talk all the time about US dominance ending and money going overseas, but that is just such a hard thing to do because the amount of money you would have to take out of the US and the places that it would have to go to find a home, it'd just be too much money exiting one and going into the other in a short period of time, right? Moving the trillions of dollars out of the US, where do you go put it?
Well, US treasuries.
Yeah, you're making my point.
Yeah.
We could go look up at the size of the US treasury market next to
right now,
German.
a lot of it's been flying to gold, honestly.
Even gold is what, 20 trillion or something total? It's still it's a much bigger number.
Well, the US stock market is 59 trillion.
The S&P 500 or the whole market?
The whole US stock market.
So almost
US,
60
domestic.
trillion in US stocks.
Yes.
Right. So if let's say the US stock market goes down by 50%, the AI bubble collapses or whatever, you got $30 trillion that has to find a home. Where's it go? It doesn't just sit in cash.
Well, that's the whole idea behind, nothing stops this train. I don't know if you've heard that trope, but it's commonly preached on X and other social medias, like Reddit. It's nothing stops this train. It's just the amount of liquidity that is pumped into the stock market through, currency debasement is unprecedented. I mean, it's like fiat currency is created at a pace of 7 to 8% per year, and it's all done through debt issuance. So money is very complicated. What constitutes money? It still confounds economists
But it's
today.
fairly simple. You print a whole bunch of money, you plug a whole bunch of money in the system, and it has to go somewhere.
It's not even printing. So let's think about the plumbing for a second. I'm going to grossly oversimplify this, but the Treasury has to auction off billions and billions of dollars every year to finance its deficit operation. So our government collects. I don't have the exact.
It's like $5 trillion, I think, of tax receipts. Last time we looked at, I think last time I looked at the data, might have been the early 2020s. It was $4 trillion. We can get that number.
Yeah, go ahead and look it up. I know it's in J.P. Morgan's Guide to the Markets, but let's say the economy
in 2024, the U.S. federal government had total receipts of $4.9 trillion, so about $5 trillion.
Yes, and then about $8 trillion of spending, right?
I think it's closer to 7. There's like a $2 trillion deficit at this point.
So $2 trillion has to come from somewhere. So every auction, the U.S. Treasury has to auction off bonds, not only to fund that deficit, but also to refinance bonds that have matured. So we're rolling over, refinancing the U.S. debt at a clip of, probably $3 trillion a year, I would say, So where does that money go? First of all, we're raising that money by auctioning off this debt, meaning people are exchanging.
People are buying
institutions. Yeah, they're trading cash for bonds. Well, why would you do that? Well, higher rates of return. So that net interest will ultimately go to those bondholders, but those bondholders also use these bonds as collateral, so that these bonds constitute money. So you're literally, injecting additional money into the market, and also that spending. You would say, well, okay, well then it's just locked up in the government. No, because what's the government do with that?
They turn around and spend it.
They turn around and spend it. So we're literally creating dollars through debt issuance. A lot of people are like, oh my God, the debt. Oh, it's going to collapse the economy. It's like, no, what it's going to do is it's going to hyper fuel or super fuel inflation.
Right. The price of assets.
Yeah. Deficit spending diverts inflation into financial assets. That's what it does. So that boils down into the statement, nothing stops this train. So when you hear someone say that, what they're essentially saying is that as government deficits accelerate, so too will asset prices.
Yeah. Well, and it boils down to what I was saying, which is, all of this money is in the system, and an individual can have a bank account and shove money into their bank account and say, hey, is it good to have this much cash? When you're an institution and you have $1 billion of money, you aren't putting it in a bank account in cash. You have to move it into, U.S. treasuries, bonds of some other kind around the world, gold, stocks. You have to put it somewhere, and
if you're paying attention, you're going to put it in something that's going to optimize your risk versus return. You're not going to leave it in your checking account.
Well, especially considering, we as individuals have FDIC insurance for our checking accounts. If the bank goes under, you're not on the hook for the first $250,000. But if you're a business keeping billions of dollars in cash or whatever, I mean, like you don't get FDIC insurance.
No,
on
you
that.
buy treasuries.
So it would seem stupid to make no return and take all the risk of the bank going under, right?
You buy treasury. That's what we do for business clients with that higher.
And back to the point, like the treasury market, I think you said is what, 60 trillion? Or that's the whole
U.S.
stock
market. The treasury market's a lot larger than that. Let me look that up. Hold on.
So it turns out the U.S. bond market is $58 trillion. The U.S.
The treasury market's 28 trillion.
Regardless, you're not pulling a large chunk of money out of that and putting it somewhere else without moving the price of that something else up a lot. And that just doesn't seem to make sense. You can go buy other stocks or other bonds, but those things are going to become less valuable. So anyway, on with the show. Welcome to the Money Alchemist podcast. I'm Brent Gargano.
And I'm your other host, Ben Jones.
And hopefully you find our banter halfway entertaining. We worked really hard to get here to the podcast today. I know our listeners are not all in Ohio like we are, but we got a massive snowstorm last night. I went to bed, no snow on the ground. I woke up 6 inches of snow on the ground. And we spent our whole morning trying to shovel our driveways so that we could get here to get this done.
Well, maybe you tried. I was able to get it done.
Well, I got my driveway is very long and it's uphill. So I got about 65% of the way done. I got over the steepest part of the hill and I said, the car can take the rest.
Yeah.
We were correct.
Yeah.
So,
but the kids were definitely excited. What's funny is the roads actually weren't that bad. Once you got out there, it seemed to be pretty fine, but
the roads weren't my problem.
It's the first snow of the year. So everybody's entitled to, a lazy day because people, I think I'm convinced of this. It's the school administrators that make these judgments. And they're like, well, it may be the only one we get this year. So of course we got to cancel school. So they start the year out.
Yeah, they're aggressive until they realize they're behind.
Correct.
And they're going to have to make up the time.
Last year, I think we had enough cancellations to where I remember we had like an ice storm one day and the roads were actually really dangerous. And the kids had no delay or anything. Yeah. And I'm just like, man, this is actually dangerous here.
See, this is the thing. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. And in North Carolina, when it snows, like I don't care what the school recommendations are, they are not doing anything.
Yes.
Nobody goes on the roads. The whole city shuts down. I used to joke that it's far enough south or far enough. Charlotte, North Carolina is far enough north to where you still get snow periodically in the winter, but it's far enough south to where they have absolutely no clue what to do with it. Cincinnati is the opposite. We're far enough north to where we're far enough south to where we don't really get like crazy snow. Like we don't have like 2 foot deep lake effect snow here in Cincy, but we're far enough north to where like the city knows how to deal with it. They got the ice, the salt trucks ready, the snow plows. Like, you could have 8 inches of snow on the ground and like realistically you could still get in and operate your entire life. That was unheard of in the South.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I've got a bunch of family down in Nashville and last year they got 5 inches of snow and you think that the world came to a stop.
I joke with, when we call Schwab's in Texas. And so sometimes I ask the reps when it's cold down there, they laugh that I guess in Texas, no offense to anybody in Texas that's listening, but I guess what I heard is that if the temperature drops below freezing, people get freaked out about dry, like no snow on the ground, everything's perfectly dry, but it's like 25 degrees. Are we safe to drive to work?
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, that's kind of our story of the morning. But we've got more exciting stories happening since the last time we had a podcast. So we had Thanksgiving. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving meal with their family, and nobody had any high heated conversations about money, politics, religion, all that sort of thing. But inevitably, there's always some family stressor that happens. But I still hope, despite that, everyone had a great Thanksgiving. We certainly had a great Black Friday. I want you to talk about your Black Friday experience because you actually went out and braved the crowds and dodged everyone.
Yeah. So I in college, I used to actually work at the local mall here in Cincinnati. So we have a mall in Cincinnati called Kenwood Mall. And I don't have the exact stat on this. When I was working there, I was always told that it is the highest grossing mall by revenue in kind of the northeast U.S. between Chicago and New York, and a lot of high end stores. Right, there's a Nordstrom there. There's a Watches of Switzerland. There's a Tiffany's. Like we have kind of all the Coach, the Gucci store, the Louis Vuitton store, et cetera, et cetera. Right, so they just sell a bunch of really nice things. And somebody,
it wasn't always that way. I remember when I was a kid, it wasn't so upscale.
Somebody told me that intersection right there, Kenwood and Montgomery Road, has the highest price per square foot rent of anywhere else in Ohio, because of the amount of commerce that goes through there. But anyway, besides the point, I worked at the mall in college. I've always enjoyed, like, if you worked at the mall at any point in your life, Black Friday season is absolutely nuts. And that was my first experience with investing, was working through Black Friday. I was valet at the mall. We parked more cars than we knew what to do with. And I would take the tip money, all the excess tip money, and start investing it. And so anyway, that's all to say that I really there's a part of me that reminisces at the atmosphere and kind of the commerce that goes on at the mall. So I was the obnoxious one that kind of got my family out of the house and said, let's go see what's going on at the mall for Black Friday. And of course, as an investment person, you're curious as to how's the economy doing.
Yes.
Holy cow. We got to the mall. We sat in lines of traffic. I mean, I again, like to go to the mall on Black Friday. So I go generally about every year and kind of see how it's going. This was nuts. There were more people. I went into Macy's, and there's like a Starbucks in the Macy's. The Starbucks line was like 80 feet long. There were people sitting on the floor in the bed section, of Macy's, like in between the beds, eating their Starbucks and hanging out. I felt like it was in an airport more than a mall.
It's wild, man.
So
yeah, I mean, you weren't alone in that. A lot of Americans did. I mean, Black Friday sales were up 9%. So they were $11.8 billion in 2025 relative to 2024, which was $10.8 billion, according to Adobe Analytics. But what's really interesting about the data is that in-store sales were actually a larger increase relative to online sales. So more people are returning back to stores. So we kind of, every year up to this point, it's online commerce has just dominated and has continued to grow relative to in-store sales. This is the first year in a long time that we've actually seen a higher growth rate in in-store sales relative to online sales. So maybe we've reached full saturation in online retail.
Well, I think people are looking for, like, I think what malls are starting to realize is that people aren't going to come in and shop in person unless you make it an experience.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the world today is driving towards how do we take our product and turn it into an experience and use that to create value and increase margins. And so if you walk into a lot of the stores in the malls now, even on Black Friday, like they had, lines out front with like a security, like they've like, we went into one of the stores in the mall. They've got like drinks for you, and they've got snacks for the kids, and they give the kids snacks and stuff. It was just more of an experience. So I think malls in general are having to rethink their whole model to some extent. And one of the things I think is changing is like why you're going to the store.
Well, I think Apple was kind of one of the pioneers of that model. If you remember the Apple Store, that's I think one of the key tenants in the Kenwood complex is, I think Apple, is it their only store in Ohio?
I don't know if it's their only store in Ohio, but it is their flagship store.
Yeah. So, when you go in there, it really is an experience. And then also too, I find another store that does this right is Lego. You go to the Lego
they had
store,
a huge line.
Oh my God. Dude, the Lego store, I love going to a Lego store. I never buy anything. I just like going in there, but it's so cool. If I were a kid, which I still kind of am when it comes to Lego, dude, I would absolutely just beg my parents to go to that store every single day.
That's so
not
funny.
Every day, but every time we were around it. But yeah, do you remember going to Toys R Us as a kid?
I never really went to Toys R Us.
It had a smell to it, and I still have that smell in my mind. It was like a plastic, kind of like almost chemical smell Toys R Us had. And I still have that smell locked in my memory. But I always loved going to that store. There was this one store we would go to. My mom would take us for our birthday, and you get to go into this like toy cave that had a bunch of cheap toys in it. I don't remember what the store was.
There was
called.
A Disney store that I used to go to as a kid like that. They had like this spaceship you could climb into, and the little green Martian guy had like a video in there, and he would talk to you and he'd pretend it was so much fun. I remember going into that. Again, experiences, right? So people go, and I think if you're a smooth operator in the retail space, this is what you're thinking about is how do I, for without increasing costs significantly, how do I take the shopping and turn it into an experience. So anyway, Black Friday was nuts. Mall spending, in general, spending was way up. You and I both went to a conference this April, and we got to listen to Dr. David Kelly, who's the head of JP Morgan's global.
He's the JP Morgan chief market strategist for their fund, JP Morgan funds.
For their global outfit, right? So he looks at all markets across the world. And he said one thing that I just couldn't get out of my head in Black Friday. He said, and this guy's a European guy. So he says, you Americans, one of the things that's so amazing about your economy is that when you get stressed or you get uncomfortable, the way that you make yourself feel better is you go out and spend money. And I just couldn't help but feel that way because, when you look at the economy today and you look at what we kind of came here to talk about, which is, like how millennials are doing and the affordability crisis, more or less. Like people
let's
are.
stop calling everything a crisis. Can we stop doing that for a second? Like,
Well,
I'm so
all right,
sick of that word.
Besides the point, like people are griping about
Mhm.
their circumstances right now, yet they're out there spending their money in full force.
Sort of. I don't think it's easy to make that claim. I think there are a lot of people that are, griping's something of a pejorative, kind of indicates that you don't, your complaints are not justified. To gripe means to, complain irrationally. So I don't think that there is a griping so much as it is just a discontent. And I think we should dig into the numbers into that and also, um, kind of explain what's happening, just unpeel the onion, if you will. But what sparked this, like, this has been a growing sentiment, and it's manifested itself through a kind of generational divide, a generational hatred. I've picked up on this and mostly social media, but also in some news articles. Like I'll read Substacks, I'll read Reddit posts and stuff where millennials have an axe to grind against baby boomers. And one of the areas in that is that millennials, and not just the millennials, Gen Z too, they criticize baby boomers for gobbling up houses and ruining affordable housing. And, they say, well, they're just buying first, second, third houses and turning them into rental properties and extracting wealth from the younger generations. And I see this, this theme in a lot of different social media posts. And, basically what it is wealth envy. Um, and what really kind of blew out this conversation was this guy named Michael Green, which I follow him on X, but I'm not sure. He's a chief investment officer for a hedge fund, I believe. But I don't know much more about his background other than I just follow him, and he's got a lot of pretty interesting commentary from time to time. But he has a Substack out there called "I Don't Give a Fig," or I give a fig. I think it's one of those. I'll put a link to his article in the show notes, but it kind of sparked a bunch of debate on, what actually is the poverty line in the United States. So what he discovered through some research is that the poverty line is actually an antiquated figure. So back in the 60s, there was a representative of the Social Security Administration that identified that people typically spend about 1/3 of their household income on food. And that is literally how the poverty line is still defined today. It is basically 1/3 the average American food budget. Well, what's happened in America over the past, 80 years? Has food become cheaper or has it become more expensive?
Well, I mean,
I'll answer the question. It was, I'm setting you up because you would think it's become more expensive, but no. American agriculture has has
you have
advanced so much.
productivity, basically.
Yeah.
Like productivity. What people don't understand is they say, well, and if you print a lot of money, that you're just going to get inflation. They forget that that inflation for goods gets offset by productivity.
Well, technology is a deflator.
Right.
And we've seen a lot of technological innovation in agriculture and also, other things as well, distribution and all that sort of thing. So the cost per family for food is not 1/3 anymore. It's actually closer to about 10%. It's still a substantial portion of a household budget. But so as a result, all these social welfare programs, what is that? It used to be called food stamps, but now it's called something else. Shoot.
SNAP.
SNAP. Thank you. To qualify for SNAP, you basically have to you have to meet the definition of the federal poverty line. It even shows up in other areas too. Like I've noticed, like to qualify for certain, like Ohio has this this financial aid for private schooling. They call it. Ed Choice. Golly.
We talked about
So
that.
yeah, Ed Choice is a great program, and it started out as a needs-based program. But in order to qualify for Ed Choice, they basically had to, because nobody was qualifying for it. So if you qualified for the federal poverty line, you weren't even thinking about private school. Like, it was so far out of, like, so basically nobody used it. So what they would have to artificially inflate this inflator, by saying, well, okay, 3x the federal poverty line. And then they finally came out with the expanded program, because even then nobody was still using it. So they came out with the expanded program that basically is like, anybody qualifies. You please take advantage of this program. So what basically this amounts to is that the federal poverty line definition is somewhat broken, where in order to qualify for it, your income has to be like $30,000 a year or less. So which is, try to raise a family on $430,000 a year in the United States. It's darn well impossible to do. I mean, you have to use federal subsidy at that point. So the old way of defining federal poverty no longer works, because Americans today are, in order to participate in the economy, they have to have dual incomes. A lot of times, I'm not saying you have to, but generally speaking, most families, in order to participate in the modern economy, it requires two incomes, which, guess what that requires?
Childcare.
Childcare. Okay. Childcare is now the most expensive thing on the family budget, followed by, guess what next?
I'm sure housing.
The health insurance.
Oh, sure. Well,
healthcare.
Yeah.
Housing is like third on the list.
Yeah.
So,
healthcare, housing, childcare, transportation. I mean, these
Yes.
are some of the main.
So these things have inflated well beyond the average rate of inflation.
Yeah, I've got a chart here that actually shows how much more these things cost than they did 30 years ago. And to your point, food actually costs less than it did 30 years ago.
Mhm.
But if you look at college is over 80% more expensive than it was 30 years ago. Housing is over 120% more expensive. Healthcare is about 30% more expensive, and childcare is about 20% more expensive.
Expensive.
Actually, it's 20% more expensive according to this data that
is biased data, because 30 years ago, dual income households weren't as prominent as they are today.
Yeah, I don't know how they source this, but your point is correct, which, millennials feel strapped.
Yeah.
Right? Because the costs of the things that we live our life, housing, childcare, and healthcare are three of the top budget items, like you said, for young people. And those things have gotten enormously more expensive than they were 30 years ago.
Yeah. So what this author, Michael Green, essentially concluded is that now I think he was trying to be bombastic. So he used Essex County, New Jersey, data, which has like higher than average living expenses there. But he came up with a figure of 140. Well, he said 130 to 150,000. So his estimate is that the new federal poverty line should be somewhere between those markers. So everybody split the difference and said 140K. So 140,000 is now the new, according to Michael Green, the new federal poverty line. And that obviously bent a lot of people out of shape. Some people felt heard, and they're like, finally, someone says the quiet part out loud, because they feel strapped, even at 100,000 in income, which I don't know about you, man, but back in when I was in high school, if you made 100,000, I mean, you might as well
6-figure income,
dude. 6-figure income means you made it. You are well on your way to the American dream, if not achieved it already. So even today, 6-figure income kind of has a positive appeal to it. But what he's basically saying is that no, I mean, that's the minimum. That's what's necessary. But what I felt was interesting, and I feel like this is accurate, is between the incomes of like 65,000, so a household income, let's say a household of 4, and you're making 65,000 after deductions and everything and expenses, you should qualify for a lot of federal subsidies. So, but you start to phase out at 65,000 and more. You start to phase out on some of those welfare programs. So what he says is that between 65,000 and like 140,000, he called the valley of death, meaning like you were disincentivized to work more. because
Right.
you would lose.
You lose things.
Your life became more expensive. And he also said that this explains a lot of the anti-immigration sentiment right now, because if you're an immigrant, you're coming here, you're probably on minimum wage, you're not making much. So you're getting a lot of, what people say, free healthcare for immigrants and, federal subsidized housing and all this and that. And then, but the biggest segment of our population that's anti-immigrant are the working poor, and he says he thinks that because they're in the valley of death and they're struggling and they're seeing people making less than they do, not struggling as hard. So it kind of explains a lot of this populist sentiment that's, pretty popular. And it's not, and by the way, this is not right and left. This is, this is the same. Mondami got voted in New York for the same reason Trump got voted in.
Yeah.
It's basically people
don't feel like the system is working for them.
Yes.
And they want something different.
Mm-hmm. So really, what we're here to talk about today more than anything is like unpack this, this new statement. Like, can you make it with $140,000 a year? Is it possible? And I would say, yes, it is. It's not easy. But I also think too, that it's important to, comment on the fact like this whole generational wealth divide, this idea that baby boomers are they're guilty as charged, that they're responsible for pilfering the younger generation. The fact of the matter is the baby boomers were the first generation whose retirements relied on the stock market and not pension plans.
Right.
Okay. So they can't blame their parents for hoarding all the wealth because their wealth was phantom. It was all locked into pension plans.
Yeah, you just didn't see it.
You didn't see it.
It was in the company's pocket.
Yeah.
Getting paid out to them as an income stream.
So the baby boomers, of course, they're going to be savvy. They're going to make good, well, most of them, most of them are pretty savvy with their money. They're going to make decisions that preserve their wealth, as would anybody. Anybody's going to make that decision. Millennials make that decision even today. So this notion that like, woe is me, mom and daddy are richer than I am, and I'm never going to get a shot. It's like, well, eventually mommy and daddy are going to pass away. Well, who gets that money? So in addition to that, your finances are going to catch up. One thing I've noticed in my life, like I'm 41 now, and that feels pretty old. Back when I was 18 or 19, I would look at people my age today and be like, they're old, they're ancient. But today,
I don't know if I've ever thought of 41 as ancient, but keep going.
Dude, I remember watching Friends in the 90s, that show Friends,
and
thinking like, those are old people. And like, they were like 21 and 23. It's like, now I'm looking back, I'm like, oh, they're young. So it's funny how your perspective shifts. But I remember when I was like 23, 24, I was married, had a kid with Catherine, and for those who don't know, Catherine's my wife, but we felt dirt poor because we were very poor, but we saved drips and drabs here and there. We had setbacks, plenty of them. And what I found is that like when you got into your late 30s, at least for me, that's when you started to really have developed skill sets and you started to get recognized for those through the form of higher income. And then also too, that money that you had saved up, now you have a decade behind you of
starting
compounding.
To grow.
Yeah, it's starting to grow. So, and you start to feel like you can breathe a little bit. I just think every young generation, they're going to feel that way. And every generation has a different way of dealing with it.
I have kids, you have kids. Any of us that have kids have probably talked to somebody who's older than us and related on the fact that, having kids is a little bit of struggle. And what do all the older people say? They say, when we had kids, we didn't have a pot to pee in. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I'm used to hearing, right? So this is the concept of being, kind of hand to mouth when you're raising a young family. Like that's not really a new concept, and the baby boomers are the people that look at me and tell me how broke they were when they were having kids. And now they seem to be doing fine. The difference is something that we talk about a lot on this podcast is that people don't truly appreciate the benefit of compounding and and really the impact that compounding has. If you start saving, and we talk about $140,000 a year. And I think that, I mean, for people that are in certain income thresholds, like the concept or like it's hard to save, right? Like life does cost a certain amount. And, some people just have a hard time saving. And that's why it's so important to grow your income. But let's assume that you can save. It doesn't take a whole lot of savings over a long period of time to really make a difference in your life. And so I tend to think, while I agree that all these things are more expensive for millennials, clearly things are more expensive and maybe millennials do feel relatively broke. I do think that over time, if we give compounding a chance to do what it can typically do, and to your point, baby boomers are not going to live forever. We're likely to, and I've actually seen stories to this effect in more recent years that, because the concept of millennials being broke isn't a new concept. I mean, 10 years ago, we were talking about this same thing. And it actually turns out, if you look at the statistics on like the actual wealth that millennials have, we're like ahead of schedule versus what people thought. So again, we're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouths. We're frustrated because, truthfully, and this is one thing I do believe, people feel wealthy or not based on their spending relative to their income. I don't care if you have $1 million in your bank account. If you are paycheck to paycheck, you still kind of feel tight, even though you've got $1 million in your bank account, right? It's so wealth, on a month-to-month basis is kind of a mindset. It has a lot to do with your expenses. So when expenses grow faster than income for a short period of time, like it plays on your mental psyche.
Yes. And that's why it's important to pay yourself first. Back to the last episode's tip of the week: learn how to log into your payroll
set
system.
Your payroll deductions.
Yeah, and I don't care how little you make, do it. And even if you feel like, oh, I'm living paycheck to paycheck now, do it, because it's the only way you're going to adopt change into your life. And I find in my experience, most people are not detail oriented. They say they are, but they're not. Budgeting requires a lot of discipline, a lot of number crunching. And I will say we work with, over the years, I've worked with thousands of households, but I would say out of that, maybe I know 10 people that do budgeting well.
Well, and the key to budgeting is I have a concept called the reverse budget, right? And that is that if you handle your direct, let's say your paycheck sends, you get paid twice a month, and every paycheck you get $10,000 to your checking account, and any of the excess goes to your investment account. Well, you can basically figure out how much you're spending based on how well your checking account's going with that $10,000 a month deposit or $10,000 a paycheck deposit, right? And so if you have to pull money out of the savings account or your investment account, then you're spending more than what's landing in your checking account. If you were able to put money back in, you're spending less. And now, instead of having to sit down in front of this spreadsheet that you manage every month and fight your natural, because I think this is what's hard, right? People all of a sudden, like, it's not natural behavior to like sit down and look at your budget and like line item it out and prioritize things. Yet people that aren't it's not naturally good at that, like try to force themselves to sit down and do it.
I don't think it's useful, because then people get lost into the details.
And I think that it would be better to work with their personality, and we coach clients on this a lot, which is like, don't set yourself up for failure. Like, if you're not a person that's really in tune and really aware of the money, don't try to shove yourself a task where you're going to sit down and budget out your money every week. You're probably going to stress yourself out. You're going to hurt your relationship with your money, not help it. And we want to do things that help improve your relationship with your money, right? And so anyway, back to some of the easy math, just taking your $140,000 example. I just use that for sample's sake here, but ran it in my financial calculator. If you were able to save 10% of $140,000, so I could kind of think about this, just making it more realistic. Let's say you make $140,000, your company matches 5% on your 401k. And all you do is make a 5% 401k contribution to get the match. And this probably doesn't feel like all that much progress in a short period of time, right? Because you're talking about adding, $14,000 a year, 10% of 140,000. But if you take that and you do it over 40 years, or even let's just say 30 years at 8% a year, you're talking about having saved $1.6 million with a total of $420,000 of contribution. So you end up 4Xing the money that you put away over time, and you end up retiring with a couple $1 million in Social Security. And that's only over 30 years. You know, you could just, for fun's sake, you could say that's from 35 to 65 years old. Well, what if you have 40 years? What if you start at 25? How does that change things? Now, instead of having 1.6 million, you've got 3.6 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look at that 10 years and what the difference is. I mean, you have more than double what you would have had you started 10 years later. And so, as an advisor, and kind of to your point, like I don't have any way to control the broader world, right? Like, I can't single-handedly fix the fact that childcare has gotten more expensive or, whatever, but I can help you take control of your situation, right? And by making small changes, I mean, it doesn't take massive amounts of savings. It doesn't take, 20% per year returns to have a very successful retirement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes sacrifice though. So I would say I'm inclined to agree with that number of 140,000. Maybe it's different geographically. I will tell you, I have clients today that make less than that, and they're making it work.
I think a typical family of four, like just anecdotal experience working with lots of young families of four, I think spending any less than $10,000 a month is really hard.
Yes.
Like, by the time you add up the housing, the food, the insurance, the childcare, everything else,
cell phone bills,
and here's the thing: you can sit there and you can tell these people, like, you need to save more money. There's two ways to save more money: you can cut expenses or increase your income. Good luck with a family of four. Like, there's all, like, what, you're not gonna not feed your kids because you need to save more money for retirement. Right? Like, there's only so much you can cut a budget by, right? But you can grow your income, in theory, unlimited. And so I think one of the things we've hit on this multiple times in the podcast, but step one to building wealth is work on your skill set and grow your income.
Yeah. And I think that the common theme between people that aren't able to make it, they're not able to achieve like a financial freedom escape velocity, and the people that can are the people that are able to maintain discipline and strive towards a goal over a long period of time. And I'm talking like 10 years. So where I see people struggle are when someone's constantly rotating careers. Like, they start to get good at something, they get frustrated, and then they bail, and then they switch careers altogether. Not saying that you can't do that. But
the natural progression of your career is you start off getting paid for your time, and getting paid for your time is not scalable because you only have so much time. So if you get paid,
and by the way, that declines as you get older because you don't have as much energy as you used to.
Yeah. So like, if you're paid for your time, you have a cap on how much money you can make. You make a certain hourly rate times a certain amount of hours.
Yeah.
The key is to get to a place where you've invested enough time to where you have an expertise that now you can get paid for. And when you can switch from getting paid for your time to getting paid for your expertise, that's really where we see a lot of the income growth.
Yes. So, but the same thing holds true when it comes to savings. So yeah, maintain a disciplined attitude, and just have the discipline to develop that expertise to fetch a higher price on your labor over time. But also, you have to maintain discipline when it comes to saving. Best example of this I can give is I started a custodial account for my son when he was it was 14 years ago, and we just started. Can you guess how much we saved into this account?
14 years ago, I'm going to say $500.
$50 a month.
So $600
a
year.
So $600 a year, $50 a month. And I still, by the way, that's all I do is $50 a month. And I did. In fact, I think I started this when he was maybe, he might've been 4. So it's been about 10 years. Would you believe that the account is worth like over $8,000 today?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
And by the way, I did that for all of my kids, and that's just going to be their fun money for when they turn of age. We had a different episode where we talked about custodial accounts, and I like to use them as a way to like engage my children and the values of investing
Yeah.
and all that. But the point I'm trying to make is like I started out with $50 a month is nothing. I can spend $50 and three trips to Chipotle.
Yeah, I just did the math. If you were to save $50 a month, starting when your child is born at age 18 at an 8% rate of return, they have over $22,000.
Yes.
Right.
And you can do this for your own self too. And what I would say is just set it up at the payroll level, ideally, and just forget about it. Put it on autopilot. And what you'll discover is in 48 months, I would say, you're gonna log in, look at the account, and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, this reminds me of a story from early on in my career when I was a valet, like I was talking about at the mall. The way that I saved was I would push more money to my investment account that I was really comfortable with, and I kind of told myself that by having less money in my checking account, I would work harder to get more money there. And so, like, I kind of believed the effect was a net positive. And as I transitioned to my job at Fidelity, I ended up living with a guy my two roommates, both two guys, and one of them was also really, really smart financial planner. And he looked at me and he said, "Your ego is way too big, thinking you're good at that. You need to automate this." And so from that moment on, I automated my savings. I've always had my savings automated, and I can tell you that the impact of automating your savings over a long period of time is pretty hard to not
discount. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's because we as humans, like we put a lot of belief in our ability to be really good at stuff.
We think of our
we overestimate our capabilities.
One weird thing about humans is we think of our future selves as being this paragon of responsibility. Everybody does this. They think of like Ben Jones.
10 years from now, I'll be more responsible.
Not even 10 years.
Like
next week, Ben. Next week, Ben is somehow going to be able to maintain his diet. He's going to work out every day. He's going to save 100% of his income. It's crazy. This is why I don't think credit cards are great. I to this day do not use credit cards. All right, and because your mindset changes. When I go to Costco and I have a credit card in my hand and I'm spending tomorrow's money, well, it's technically next month's money. The way I feel about that is different. I cannot help it. I'm a financial planner by trade. I fall victim to this every single time. I'm much more likely to buy an iMac. I'm much more likely to buy that generator I don't need. Much more likely to buy, extra steak, things that I don't need. Now, once I'm spending the money that is in my checking account, I log into my bank app and I see the balance there. And by the way, I artificially make that balance super low. So my wife does this for me. She will fund what we call our spending account every day. Usually it's got like $300 in it. I'm going to tell you right now, that does not go very far, but it works. When I log in and I see that my checking account, I basically have $300 to spend on this particular shopping trip. I will definitely spend less money. That's why when people say, well, Ben, the points, it's like,
but see,
I save so much more money through thrift relative to the points I would earn otherwise.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with that. But again, back to my whole concept, like for me and the clients that I work with, I don't really want them walking into a store and feeling anxious about their ability to spend some money on a day. Like I think a positive relationship with your money is about balance. And so you want to be saving properly, but you also want to spend. Like I would say most of my clients, when we run their financial plan, the most valuable thing I can give them is permission to spend more of their money, knowing that they're not going to screw themselves over. And so I don't know, I'm conflicted on that point because on one hand, like I recognize that maybe you'll spend less by using cash versus the credit card, but I still go back to when I think about the impact that, you can make on somebody's wealth through the advice that you give. And not everybody can increase their income, right? I mean, certain jobs, like I'll pick on teachers. I think teachers work super hard. I think they get kind of the short end of the stick. I mean, my wife was a teacher. She was working nights, weekends. She spent a ton of time working and the pay was barely enough to cover childcare, right? And there was no upside. I mean, you're kind of stuck
your
to
raises
a
are not
grid.
very much.
You're stuck to a grid at the school, and like you just, X plus Y equals Z, right? So that can be really tough. And those are the kinds of situations where you really do have to make sure you're being mindful and pinching pennies. But if at all possible, I would much rather try to tell somebody to increase their income, through building their skill sets, or through, maybe they work at a job and they know that they, would rather have a different job and they could get paid more, but they kind of like their boss and they feel bad. And, I mean, I've had clients where they're sacrificing their family's prosperity for the fact that they don't want to hurt their boss's feelings, and sometimes just being there as the voice to say, hey, I totally respect that you appreciate your boss and that you have loyalty. And I think that loyalty is valuable, but like, what's the cost of that? And is that really the right thing for your family? And I've actually had clients that have had conversations on the back of those conversations and have raised their income. I mean, I have one client that more than doubled his income on a conversation, like a tough conversation with a boss that he was unwilling to have. And so I guess that's all to say that from my perspective, like I want my clients going to Costco and buying stuff that they need and not worrying about it. At the same time, I don't want that to mean that they're destitute. And going back to the automating your paycheck, automating your investments, having a financial plan, having a process, it's having a financial plan, and financial planning is not like a one-time product. It's a way of life. If you have a plan in place and you have a process on how you have your paycheck, you have all these things in place, all of a sudden the kind of, let's just say, comfort that you feel when you go to the store and you don't have to stress about like how much money is in my checking account. Can I spend $120 today? I don't know.
Brent, you are completely underestimating my ability to destroy myself financially with irresponsible spending. I don't think I'm alone in this. I need to be worried about it. I think maybe you don't personally, and it's easy to project that attitude on other people, but I personally feel like I need to have a spending check. I need to have a governor there. That is valuable to me.
Yeah, I guess my point isn't that you do or don't need. I'm saying that everything in balance. Right. On one hand, I don't want to go to the store and have absolutely no concerns and I'm just going to buy whatever and it doesn't matter. On the other side, if I'm going to have money in my bank account and I'm going to have a financial plan and I'm going to be invested, I don't want to have to go to the store and be so anxious that like if I need a generator, but I don't have the extra $300 in my bank account, I have to worry about it.
I have the ability. What this controls me from doing is making expenses that are truly unnecessary. I still have enough wiggle room. I don't deprive myself of many things. So I don't want you to perceive that,
I'm not picking on you personally. I guess what I'm picking on is just the process of like, which one's more impactful to your long-term wealth? Penny pinching at the store and, saving on one extra purchase.
I think both are required, because if I spent, like you said earlier, you can feel poor if you make good amount of money. I'm very blessed. My family does well. So through a lot of hard work, by the way, we've developed an expertise. It wasn't always this way. I remember when I first got into this business, they said, 10 years, if you keep at this for 10 years, you're going to make a 6-figure income. They use those terms. Actually, they use the term they would say is you're going to hit 100K rolling. That basically meant you made it $100,000 in gross revenue. But I'm going to tell you right now, man, it took a lot longer than 10 years to get to that point. It was really hard fought and won. So thank God that I'm here today. But, I could easily spend all of the income that I make. I see how people can fall into this trap because, it's Dave Ramsey has a saying for this. I forget what he says, but basically you out earn your stupidity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you try to out earn your stupidity. That's what people try to do. And I need to have a governor on my spending so that way I never fall victim to this, paycheck to paycheck. There was a football player out on X that was on a video, I forget who this football player was, but he got $100 million contract. And he was talking about how difficult it was to live on the $100 million contract. Basically, he was complaining it wasn't enough for him. So no matter how much money you make, it's possible to be
Yeah, I'm
irresponsible
not
with it.
arguing that you shouldn't be mindful. I
Mhm,
guess what I'm arguing is that you should have processes in place to keep you,
mhm.
on track, right? By
Definitely, yeah.
running a financial plan on a regular basis, by automating your savings, and by, making sure that you're not having to take withdrawals from your investment accounts and the places where you're accumulating wealth according to your plan to
Well,
fund the extra spending.
I
Like, to me, when I look at a client, let's say I run their financial plan and they need to save $40,000 a year to make their retirement work. If they spend every other penny of their income, I'm not super worried about it, right? As long as they're saving what they need to save to be on track, it's okay to spend the rest.
yeah, but that requires you to have that plan in place and the
Processes,
discipline, yes, and I
automating your paycheck, setting up your 401k contributions, all the things that we talk. I mean, by the time you help somebody max out their 401k, max out their HSA, and save a little bit of money outside of their retirement accounts, like they're saving, 30, $40,000 a year, right? And so I'm not saying everybody can save that. What I'm trying to say is that those things, like, I would hope that you're not borrowing out of your 401k to pay for your Costco trip if we have a financial plan in place, and we've been talking about this for years,
Mhm.
right? If you are, then I'm going to have some bigger questions about, like, why, we've had this plan in place for all these years. Have you not and really that wouldn't even happen because we meet on a regular basis to assess the plan. So we should see that
But
situation or that problem coming.
minimizing my lifestyle expenses also frees up the amount of cash I have available to devote to those financial goals. So I just think both are necessary. You need to moderate your spending and make sure that you're not making frivolous lifestyle choices. That's just my personal belief.
Yeah, it's fine. But
Like
like,
I
what happens when you have a 37-year-old that wants to join a country club and enjoys going out and spending the time there and this and that, and they want to, or they want to send their kids to private school, or
Mhm.
they want to put a pool in behind their house, or, do you say, hey,
Don't get me started on pools.
well, I mean, look, we can argue over whether those things are, like, generally speaking, good financial decisions, but what it basically boils down to is, do you want it? Would it make a
These
meaningful
things
impact
that
in your
you're
life, and
talking
can you
about,
afford it?
these things you're talking about are not necessarily applicable to the household making 140,000. That's kind of the target demographic that I'm focusing on right now. So like if you're making 140,000 a
If you're
year
making
and you're
140,000, the
thinking about a
number one
pool,
thing you can do to influence your wealth is to build your expertise and work to grow your income. I still believe that.
yes. So, but you shouldn't be thinking about a pool. You shouldn't be thinking about a country club membership. You shouldn't be thinking about a lot of things. You should be thinking about, uh, you know, really just educating yourself, developing expertise, as you said, which will help on the income front. But also, I think you need to institute behavioral controls in your spending. One thing I will say is tough. I do want to address this because not all of the complaints are invalid. I think that there are major differences between the life that baby boomers enjoyed and the life that millennials have today. One of those is the necessity of childcare. It's just a reality. So for the boomers that are listening, you have no clue. You truly have no clue. Like it is so expensive. We actually had this question over Thanksgiving. I asked everyone, do you know what it costs to do childcare today? And everybody threw out numbers. You know what the number was? It's $1,200 a month per child. You know, that is unreasonably high, but it's also the reality. That's what it costs for full custodial care,
Yeah, so
and
two kids, you're talking
yeah,
$30,000
I
a
mean,
year.
it's more. It is 3x what the boomers' mortgage used to be. You're talking a massive increase to the point where it eats up about 80% of the second individual's income. Second thing, healthcare. It's unbelievable. Healthcare is a criminal enterprise at this point. I am so disgusted with the current state of American healthcare. And we could do a whole nother podcast on that. But it is literally at the point now where if you do not have employer coverage, you're better just to wing it. You're better just to not buy healthcare. And then if you end up with a healthcare need, hopefully all of your money's tied up in qualified plans and you just default on the bill because it is that bad. It truly is. Like I cannot sit there and blame someone who is fully doesn't have employer sponsored coverage and they make $140,000 a year with a family of 4 and they say, Ben, I don't want to spend $2,700 a month on this. And I would say I don't either.
I priced out a high deductible plan for my family on the quote Affordable Care Act. Now we don't. There's a big discussion around subsidies.
Yes.
And if your income is low enough, again, to your point, the what you called it, the zone, but a high deductible plan. Okay. So each of the people on the plan has like a $7,000 plus deductible, costs $1,700 a month.
Yes. So we're at the point now, as a financial planner, I am saying this, we're at the point now for a healthy family. It's almost as irresponsible to buy health insurance as it is responsible to buy health insurance.
You still do it because what happens if you had a $500,000 medical bill? Right.
At this point, I'll tell you exactly what happens. What happens is you default. What happens is you say, sorry, I can't pay. And then at that kind of bill, by the way, you're at $500,000, you're talking about something truly life-threatening. So, there's a good chance.
That stuff happens, right? That's why you buy the health insurance, really.
But what happens then is if the bill is high enough, the hospital, the healthcare provider could potentially try to sue you for the money and potentially garnish wages and whatnot. But there's still a cap on the amount you're still better off not doing it.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say. Like now I'm not saying better off. Let me rephrase that. You're not better. It's a flip of the coin. Health insurance has gotten so egregious to where it is a reasonable financial planner could support you making either decision.
Yeah. I don't know. I still wouldn't recommend clients.
No, what I would recommend honestly is a cost sharing health network. So, that's, I'm not going to get into what my family and I do, but we have a strategy and it's not using traditional health insurance because I think it's a ripoff personally. There's better ways to do it. But I'm not going to state that how we do it now because it's so your plan needs to cater specifically to your health situation. And I can't say that my situation would work well for everyone. In fact, it probably wouldn't. But I think that the traditional health insurance marketplace is so difficult for young people to navigate these days. That's my only point. It's like it's just, I remember, and this has happened just in my lifetime, like as an adult. I remember when when my wife and I had our first child, it was 2009. And my health insurance premium, we had a high deductible plan then. Can you guess what that meant? A high deductible plan?
$3,000 deductible?
No, $1,500. Family max out of pocket. That was considered high deductible. Can you guess how much my monthly premium was?
$500.
It was like $300
for
a family of 3. Yes.
How crazy.
So, and today I priced out a plan that was similar to that. The lowest deductible I could get was $6,000. And the max out of pocket was $16,000. And the premium on it was $3,800 a month.
I don't know about that.
A gold plan,
I literally just priced out high deductible plan, family of 5.
Well, mine was a family of 6. So, but family of 3, I'd have to look at.
Well, no, mine's family of 5, right? High deductible plan, $1,700. But I mean, mine's still, the way I'm looking at it, I'm spending like $23,000 a year for health insurance. And then I still float 100% of my healthcare bills unless they're absolutely nuts. So we plan for $30,000 a year of healthcare expenses pretty easily, right? And to your point, if you have a W-2, for anybody listening that has employer benefits and you go through your annual enrollment and you see what your health insurance costs, compare it to those numbers that I just gave you, because I think what you'll find is that that employer coverage is really valuable. So anyway, we've beat this topic up a lot. The point is, the world is expensive. If you can't raise your income, you must find ways to save. A little bit of savings goes a long way. Pay yourself first. Make sure you're invested. make sure you have a plan and a process.
So identify what it is you're trying to do. Like, what is it do you want? Like it could even be something somewhat nebulous. Like, I want financial independence. Okay, well, let's talk about the date. By what date? All right, let's put a price tag on that. What's financial independence mean to you? It could mean that I want to be able to go to a restaurant and not have to worry about the bill. These things all have price tags, and an adept financial planner is going to be able to figure out what that is. And then it's just simple time value money calculation. We just figure out, okay, well, how long will it take us? How many months do we have to hit that goal? What's the assumed rate of return that's reasonable? And what's the dollar amount that we have to commit to that? And a lot of times what you'll find is that there's more goals than there is income. So that gives you a starting point. And then you figure out, what is a reasonable goal to have. And that will align your expectations with reality too, which has an added benefit that people discount. And that is, it makes your goals achievable and more concrete, and thus encouraging.
It's a smart goal.
Yeah, it makes it encouraging, because as you work towards that goal, it's a reasonable goal. Like, imagine, for example, that you wanted to dunk a basketball like Michael Jordan, and you were only 5 foot tall, and you were also 50 years old. All right, hate to say it, it's never going to happen. You could go out to that basketball court every day and jump with all your might, and what you're going to end up doing is snapping an ankle. You're not going to end up dunking like Michael Jordan. So you've got to start with a goal that is not discouraging, and that creates like a feedback loop in your mind, and it makes it fun. And you're going to feel less like a victim in the economy. You're going to feel more like you're in control. That's a very important emotional state to be in. So it all starts with talking with a financial planner. You don't have to talk with a financial planner, but I just think it's easier to do it with a financial planner because they've just seen a lot more scenarios. They can tell you what's realistic, what's not unrealistic. But you're going to need to have that discussion and make sure that your goals are reasonable and that they're achievable. And then you have to institute a program of discipline to get there, and that's where you and I are saying, like, learn how to use payroll deduction, because that's going to be the option that works for most people. So,
I think the main point that I get across is like, you can, I mean, I don't want to discount the fact that people have real reasons to be frustrated with, prices of things and their income, but it's one thing to be frustrated. You have to do something about it. And, there are certain things that are in your control and there are certain things that are out of your control. So our job is to help you prioritize the things that are in your control and help start making decisions and taking action that continues to swing the pendulum so that you can retain control and you don't have to live life as a victim of whatever economy you happen to grow up in.
Yes. By the way, I did while you said that, I know we beat this topic to death, but I do want to say that a health insurance premium, the same one I would have, I did for a family of 3, a 1-year-old, a 25-year-old, and a 21-year-old, with a $1,400 deductible, with a max out of pocket of $14,000. Can you guess what the premium is?
I'm going to say $2,000.
Yeah, pretty close. It's $1,828 a month.
Yeah, see, that makes more sense to me. But it's still, I mean, that's 20. That's like we're talking about a family in their 20s with a newborn.
Yes.
Right. And they're spending how much? We're talking $26,000 a year.
Well, it's not 26. That would be close. Well, I mean, if you include the deductible.
If you include the deductible, like assuming that they have to take their 1-year-old to the doctor a few times a year and that they're going to pay their premium. I mean, they're pretty quickly at $25,000.
Yeah. The math.
So back to your point, I mean,
the math works out to $23,336. But
if you're on if you're making $100,000, $140,000 a year, and you've got a house, childcare, $30,000 of health insurance premiums before you insure your life insurance, your disability insurance, so you get to eat your food, go out and have fun once in a while. I mean, it is easy to see why people are frustrated, right? And I don't want to minimize that with this podcast. I think we have a lot of sympathy for the people that are in that spot, but our job is to help make a realistic plan as to how to get yourself in control and put yourself in a
It's
position
the only
of
path
power.
forward. Like complaining about it does no good. It might be cathartic in some respects, but it's not going to get you to a better place. What's going to get you to a better place is to buckle down, admit that, it's just the reality that you're in, and then figure out how to get ahead of it. And the only way to do it, it's like imagine if you're, 200 pounds overweight. There's only one thing to do, and that is to get to live a healthier lifestyle. And the way you do that is by adopting some sort of disciplined behavior around it. Either that, or you're just going to end up dying. And I don't think
All right. Well,
I don't
with
think
that,
that's very appealing. But let's go ahead and shift gears. We actually don't have any listener Q&A this month. This week. I guess I can have I do have a hot topic that I've been working on, and one that's becoming more and more popular. This wasn't a question for the show per se, but it was a question that I fielded over this holiday week, and that is, Ben, what do we do when our when we've been compromised electronically? Like, what do we do when we click on a hyperlink and we
A phishing
compromise?
link.
Yes, and we compromise our computer. So this is happening more and more and more.
We could have a whole podcast on this.
We probably should. Actually, we should get Paul Chima in here.
We
to
really
talk about
should
it.
have a whole podcast
Yeah,
on this.
let's do that. We'll make a promise for that. But I will answer this question right now. So the best thing to do is to never click hyperlinks that are emailed to you without solicitation, even if it's from friends. If you get one of the worst things that you can click on are like unsolicited like party invitations. You know how people can sign up for these invitations, and then you click a link and then you can RSVP to them. Even if it comes from a friend, do not click on the link. What a lot of these cyber criminals do is they hack into people's emails, and then they will send out to their entire contacts list these phishing emails, which are invitations to some party, some fictitious party that doesn't exist. People will click the link thinking, oh, it's from John or it's from Susie. And then before you know it, you've got malware downloaded on your computer. Also, having a Mac does not protect you. People think that there's this notion out there that, your Apple devices can't get infected. No, that's not true. The reason that came into being is because Macintosh devices used to be not used commonly. It was like 1% of the population used Macintosh devices. Now it's flipped on its head. Now cyber criminals specifically target iPads and iPhones because that's what everybody uses. Now, there are certain reasons why Macs are a little bit more secure, but that's beyond my scope of understanding, and I'd have to get a tech guy to come in and talk about, or tech gal. But back to the main question is like, what do I do? The first thing you should do is shut off your device, immediately disconnect it from the internet, and then access another device and immediately go into all of your financial accounts, your email accounts, all these things, and update the passwords and make sure you've got what's called multi-factor authentication enabled. So the next thing you should do is take your device to something like, Best Buy Geek Squad, or even like Micro Center here, or even Apple has their Genius Bar you can go to, and have them run a full scan on the device that you use to click on the link. Even then, you still may not, be fully protected. It's in this particular example, my client literally clicked on a link, nothing else happened. Somehow or another, their online financial access to their financial company, their user credentials were compromised, and some actor was able to log in their account and move some money. Fortunately, it was stopped. The fraud department quickly picked up on this, but still, it's a big pain in the butt to unwind that. So if you happen to click a link and you find out that the link is no good, it was an invalid link, or it was a suspicious link, or hopefully for certain that it was a bad link, that's what you should do. What you shouldn't do is ignore it.
Yeah,
just hope it all works out.
And I would say, so financial crimes are on the rise. Earlier this summer, I actually had a client who called in trying to request a large distribution, and they were being coerced to basically do it. We stopped the distribution. We didn't actually send them the money, so that was a big win. But as a result of that, I did some digging, and it turns out the FTC has a pretty good website for this. So if you have any questions on financial scams, am I being scammed? We'll put a link to the FTC website in the show notes. But one of the most, I would say, helpful things on there for people that might be subject to financial scams is they have a page with all sorts of examples of existing current financial scams that they know about. So, if you find yourself having to buy gift cards or go to a Bitcoin ATM, I mean, these scammers are constantly creating new ways to try to convince you to give them your money. And the FTC compiles the different processes that they know about and writes about them. So again, one of the problems is when you're in the middle of one of these, you're being told not to talk to anybody else. You're being told you're in a lot of problems. So, worst case, if you don't have anybody to talk to and you're questioning it, go to the FTC website, take a look at some of the scams that are out there, see if there's something familiar to what you're dealing with. And if hopefully not, but if they actually do manage to scam you out of some of your money, the FTC has a whole page on what to do if you were scammed and steps to take. So anyway, we'll put that in the show notes. I know that's a little off topic. We should talk about that on a whole episode because that stuff is becoming more prevalent.
Yeah, it is, especially with these AI tools being available to anyone, not just good actors, but bad actors as well.
Yeah.
So let's end the episode with the tip of the week. Do you have one? Because if you don't, I've got one.
Go for it.
Okay. So I feel like this is appropriate because people, we're heading into shopping season. And one thing that is difficult to find sometimes is like a unique gift to buy someone you love. And what I found to be really fun is actually going on to an auction site and going into there's these online auctions. Actually, how I've discovered this, I have a client that's actually an auctioneer. He's uses the fast voice and everything, the whole 9 yards. But he publishes his auctions on a site called Auction Zip. And you can I'll put the link in the show notes, but you can go to auctionzip.com and there's auctions happening all over the world. And these are like, if you want to know that these antique retailers that you can go to and you're like, where are they getting all this stuff? Well, this is where they're getting it. They go to there's a lot of estate auctions. So you get some crazy deals or some really unique furniture pieces. A lot of it's garbage, I'll be honest. It's a lot of it's hunting through, hunting for a needle in the haystack. But if you like that sort of thing, if you're someone who really likes a good deal or you like historic things,
there's several of these sites.
Yes.
Everything But the House, I think, is another one.
Everything But the House buys from Auction Zip. This is like a main line straight to the source, baby. You can do online. There's a lot of online stuff you can bid for, but a lot of these auctions, you actually have to show up. You have to show up and hold up a sign and everything.
Interesting.
But yeah, you can get some crazy deals. So you can buy bulk coins. You can buy antique furniture. You can buy all sorts of things, man. It's all there. Yeah. Anyway,
I'll give you my tip. I have one in line with Black Friday shopping. And if you're going to talk about an auction site, one thing that I do when I'm shopping online in the holiday season is and you guys, this is not an endorsement by any means, but I have a plugin on my computer called Honey. And my favorite thing that Honey does is they have a price history section. So if I'm on Amazon and I'm looking at an item, the little Honey thing pops up and I can click Get Price History. And I can look over 30, 60, 90, and 120 days and see what Amazon had it listed for.
Oh boy, Honey was there was a what do you call it? Scandal with Honey. I got to tell you about when you're done.
Well, but what I find really useful is you can distinguish, did Amazon jack the price of this item up for 2 weeks before they marked it down 50% on Black Friday? And you can go into the price history on Honey. You can see exactly where the item was priced 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, et cetera. And so you just for me, as somebody that wants to buy with confidence, knowing that I'm getting a good deal, it's really helpful to be able to look 3 months back in time and say, how does the price that I'm getting today look relative to those months? Not just like relative to the price they crossed off on the Amazon listing.
Yeah. Well, by the way, this is not a knock on honey, but I was watching a YouTuber gripe about the honey thing. So what a lot of YouTubers, like one way they make money is they'll put like a promotional link for a product that they endorse.
Okay.
And what happens with the honey, what do you call those things? The plugins.
Yeah.
What happens with the honey plugin is it basically overwrites that promotional key code. So if you click a link in like a YouTuber promotion link, they're supposed to get like a kickback or a commission from the retailer. Well, when you have the honey plugin downloaded, it overrides that.
Interesting.
It overrides that. So a lot of these like social media stars were getting upset that honey was overriding. To my knowledge, they still do it. But you know what's happening in the back end? Like you might wonder, like how's honey making money? They're making money because it's a business designed around these endorsement links. So anyway, just a little interesting tidbit there.
I think we went on. This has been a long episode.
We've got a lot of stuff here that we talked about. So we're going to let the listeners go. We appreciate everybody for hanging on this long, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, should be before the holidays are in.
Yeah,
before the end of the year.
I think it'll be the last show of the year. So looking forward to that.
All right, happy holidays.
Opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Advisory services offered through National Wealth Management Group, LLC.